Once more, Queen Street, Brisbane resounds to the marching feet of American sailors.
An elaborate welcome parade for American troops on the streets of Brisbane in 1942.
The American captain says, "We're here because we're here." Australia says, "That'll do us."
The legacy of their presence is still visible even today. Modest brick buildings like this one were top secret and instrumental in the war effort.
The heart of the site for the Capella receiving station is this room. And as a receiving station, obviously the receiving of messaging occurred in this room.
This radio receiving station near Moreton Bay was a direct communication line with Washington DC and the fronts of the Pacific during World War II.
All of the messaging for the war effort from Southwest Pacific occurred here, and we have a small selection of surviving radio equipment.
Controlling it all was American General Douglas MacArthur.
Hard-bitten officials are on tiptoes with expectancy. Everybody is looking for the great man of the Philippines. Now, our Supreme Commander in the Southwest Pacific.
A giant of the war era, his arrival in Australia was front-page news. Brisbane would soon become his base. The Courier Mail, dated March 19, 1942, featured a fawning write-up.
General MacArthur carries his 62 years as though he were 40, dashing and handsome with his cap always at a rakish angle. He has 13 awards for gallantry.
He was an extraordinary figure, and it's pretty extraordinary, I think, the level of control or influence he had in Australia when he arrived.
With his headquarters in Brisbane CBD, a network of supporting radio stations were rapidly set up around the city. Today, the station at Birkdale is the only one left, a link to a past long gone. According to oral histories, MacArthur was a frequent visitor to the station and said to have even slept there on occasion.
These places are like artefacts of history, and if you don't have them, it's harder to understand. You experience the sort of history in reality by visiting these places.
The US Army selected sites like Birkdale that had plenty of space and the right conditions for its new antenna technology.
By the time this facility was constructed in 1943, this would have been cutting edge. As the messages were received through the rhombic array antenna on this site, this room was where they were unencrypted.
My earliest memory is that you could see the radio station from the Old Cleveland Road, going along the road, and we really had no concept of what it was doing here other than it was an American-run radio station.
The types of messages received here ranged from the mundane to the euphoric. Local Dante Ballerino was on the site with a friend when the message came through that the war was over.
Well, on the day of the surrender, Huey was on his horse, and we were just out the front here, and I was on the push bike, and suddenly there was a lot of noise and whooping going on, and some of the soldiers ran out. One of them let Frog on the back of the pony and actually rode it into the station.
After so much bloodshed and the double blasts of atomic bombs in Japan, this is the message that announced World War II was finally over. Received at Birkdale Station, it read,
"Felicitations to our comrades in arms, the men and women of the Signal Corps throughout the world. Formal surrender of the Japanese Imperial Government was signed on the battleship Missouri in Tokyo Bay at 09:08 on September 2nd, 1945.
After the war, the site was controlled by the Commonwealth Government and continued to be used for radio communications.
This site in particular has been a place of mystery. For 75 years after the Second World War, the place remained off limits because they continued top secret radio surveillance on the site. And as the rest of the suburbs developed into residential, commercial, industrial land, this place remained untouched.
Now the building is entering its next phase. Plans to redevelop the enormous 62-hectare site and restore the heritage-listed station are underway. The Redland City Council is converting the grounds into community space. It will controversially also include an Olympic canoe slalom venue on its western boundary.
And in a lot of the feedback was the very high community expectation that the land should be preserved for its heritage, environmental and cultural values, also the conservation.
It's fantastic that these places still exist, and I think it does take a sort of real commitment from owners to keep that story going and make changes that are, I guess, sensitive to the history of the place.